So we've done a lot of talking about leadership development. I know some of you are coming in and taking your seats. We will get going with our panel discussion. I think this was such a great opportunity to actually take a lot of the things that we're learning and apply it to the industry, right? How does this really make sense in the real world? And why is leadership important? What nuggets are we going to take? And let's just get into some, discussion applying this to our industry. So that's why we wanted to do this panel today. And then the topic is future-proof your success, staying relevant, and building resiliency in any economy. I love this. These leaders were picked very strategically because they are the types of leaders who tend to rise above, even in a down market. And what is it that they do? What leadership principles do they employ? And we'll just get their insights and hear from them today. But first, I will start by introducing them. And actually, I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with you, Colin, because you can all introduce yourselves better than I could.
Hi, everyone. I'm Colin Strother, Executive Vice President of Rochester Electronics.
And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Taylor, and I'm with Vishay. I'm your Senior Vice President of Customer Experience and have the joy of working with every function of our company. And just really pleased to be here today.
Mm-hmm. We're so pleased to have you. And it's not Ann Taylor, the designer. It's the Ann Taylor
with the knee
that we learned yesterday. Right. Yes, okay.
All right, Sarah Rich. I'm with Supply Frame. Those of you who aren't familiar, Supply Frame is, we have digital media, some of the aggregator services we've been talking about, intelligence and supply chain solutions for this industry. Many of your companies are our customers. Thank you very much for all of that, and really happy to be here. I'm responsible for customer experience, so everything from customer success, operations, any of the programs that we do, that's my team.
My name is Martin Chatterton, CEO of EE Tech Group. And again, similar to Sarah, thank you for we have many customers in this room, so thank you for that. We're a digital company, and we provide digital solutions to many of the suppliers and distributors in this room.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. All right, let's get into our discussion. So these questions, I think, are super important. As a leader, what is on your mind right now, and what makes you kind of lose sleep? Like, what is it that would be on your mind, Colin?
I think we're in the middle of the longest industry downturn. I mean, I know there's kind of high spots at the minute, maybe in AI, certain memory sectors, but the high point for us at Rochester was February 2022. I think the reason for it was the pandemic, and in my career, there's been three major events that really caused three major cycles. One was .com, the other was the Great Recession, and this one is obviously COVID. During the shortages, there was a lot of talk of, is there duplicate ordering? And everyone said no. Well, of course there was, right? Like the port of Long Beach is closed, you order parts from someone else. Shanghai FTZ is closed, you order parts from someone else, and so on and so forth, right? I'd visit customers and they would show me all of their inventory and they were just missing that golden screw. Remember those conversations? So ultimately, the market was oversold and today it's undersold, right? We're very, very fortunate. We are in a growth industry. I remember working for Arrow nearly 25 years ago and people were calling the end of distribution back then. But there's no getting away from it. When you're in a longer downturn as an industry, it's harder to have fun, right? And I think what we all need is getting back to an element of normalcy as well, right? Because even during the shortages, that was during COVID. Think of everything else we were dealing with there. Sure, there was lots of orders coming through. You quote a customer, you can get the order, right? But there was a lot of other stresses as well. So we talk about resilience. I think we all need to give ourselves a round of applause for being so resilient that we're all here today.
Yes,
absolutely.
Right? I think so too. Yeah.
And just to finish, I was traveling 2 weeks ago with a colleague, and not someone I knew that well. Really, really great guy, and we've recently promoted him to a very senior position. And he's been in the industry for a long time, and he said, "You know what, Colin? I never go 2 or 3 days without thinking I'm going to get fired, right?" So a lot of us here, we're measured on a number or achieving a goal. And we have to live with that, right? We have to get used to that, right? We have to accept the highs and we have to get a roll and run into the lows. So my dad always says to me, hey, are you busy? I'm like, Dad, part of my role is sales. I'm either busy selling or busy trying to sell. So what keeps me up at night? Probably lack of orders. Yes. And what kept me up at night during the shortages? Probably lack of orders. So nothing's going to change, right?
Okay, good answer. All right, Ann.
Well, it's interesting because in our company, there's a lot of change going on. And then I look out into the industry, into this world, and all the different events that within minutes you're going to have to pivot and respond to. Whether it's export restrictions, whether it's a geopolitical situation, all kinds of things that are out of our control. And Colin, to your point, we're still expected to perform. And we're asking people, in part of the job and responsibility of leaders, is to make sure that the company delivers on the metrics. So we're going to ask you to do something completely different. We're going to give you a good 10, 15 minutes for you to get your head wrapped around it. And we want you to feel confident as you move forward and drive it towards this. And, it's one thing for the messaging to come from the top. The expectation is clear. But the art of drilling it down into the organization so that everyone can successfully understand, meet, and drive the objective in a cooperative, collaborative, professional way is a fine art. And you have to address different functions different ways. But I believe in my heart that the company and people, human beings in this room, are all going for the greater good. And they want to work directionally, and everyone wants to be successful. But this is a world that's changing every 7.5 seconds.
Yes, good answer. All right.
I'm going to actually add on to what Ann said, because I said all that, and faster than ever. Right? Keeping up with what's happening, trying to stay ahead, staying ahead of your customers, staying ahead of orders, staying ahead of the next pandemic or interrupter that's coming in, and also working on yourself and developing and leading your team and doing all these things. There's not enough time in the day. How do you prioritize? How do you make sure that people aren't feeling overwhelmed and burnt out, and that we do keep our eye on the prize because we have to, but in a way that you're finding satisfaction, right? In the way that you're growing as you do it. And that's a lot. And by the way, I'm going to give you a hint as a leader. I always thought, when I get to leadership, I'm going to know what to do. I'm going to have it all figured out because of these years of experience. There's no playbook. We went into COVID. We had no idea. We come out of COVID. We're this brave new world of the hybrid model and working at home and still engaging folks. There's no playbook to all of this. So, as a leader, I'm trying to, try new ideas and keep my team motivated, but I'm looking to my team just as much because we're all in this together.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. There's certainly not a playbook, right? There hasn't been a playbook for the last 3 years. I don't think there ever has been a playbook, right, for leadership in general. I think it's one of those things that you do, it's almost on-the-job training to some degree, right? You learn as you go. And last week I was meeting with the CEO of a very large distributor, and I asked this gentleman, some of the things that they were doing in their organization, which is much bigger than ours. And they're very similar. They're very similar things, right? And I think, to answer your question, Jackie, what keeps us up at night is the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty of, we've heard in this industry cautiously optimistic for 3 quarters, 4 quarters. We think we've hit the bottom. We say, well, next quarter, right? We don't know, right? We don't know. And then you watch the news, you watch all these other things that we shouldn't be watching probably because that just creates more uncertainty for us. But we also have to understand too, our employees are humans, right? Our employees are humans. So as uncertain as we are as business leaders, and we're not going to make as much profit or we're not going to ship as much product, they're going through most people are going through even more uncertainty in their personal life, right? So whether it's health insurance premiums going up or whatever it might be. So I think for us at EE Tech, we try to balance that line between having empathy with the uncertainty in life in general, not just business, with the needs of the business every day. And we try to do our very, very best to balance those two things out. And some days we get it right, some days we don't. But I do think we have to understand that a business is nothing more than a collection of people. So as uncertain as we are as leaders. I think when you go home, you're probably you're even more uncertain about the future. So you have to take that into consideration.
Good answer. So it actually makes me think of like so many of the conversations we've had and so many people who wait to go into those leadership roles because they think, oh, I just need this extra education, or I need this, or I need that. Just go, because it's learning on the job. It's like, just go into it and you'll figure it out. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, maybe a couple of you, so what thought processes or strategies do you employ to meet challenging business goals, particularly when it comes to managing people, functions, best practices, all of the above? Because we are in a time, it's been a prolonged period of time, right, where it's been a trying market. So the best asset we have is our people. And so what are we doing to manage our people through all these ups and downs? And so what are those tried and true strategies? You mentioned, Colin, you've been through a few cycles, right? So what has helped you rise up to the top every time?
Well, I'm not sure I did, but I hope I did. And it wasn't just me, clearly. I travel a lot, and I'm a big believer in being with the job is done, right? With the people here today, for example, not behind my desk. And none of my best ideas, if I have any good ideas, come when I'm behind my desk. They typically come where I might be in, Singapore on a Saturday afternoon out for a walk. Yep. I get this idea. So when you get to a position where you're responsible for some things, you're kind of a little bit of an entrepreneur where you're having a thought, you're having an idea, right? And then you now need to try and land that plane. And that's where it becomes very, very difficult, because the idea, then you get a few more people involved and you cultivate it and it becomes a plan. So you get that far, right? And remember, you really want to do this, you think it's going to be great. That plan then becomes a strategy. So far, so good, right? Then it becomes some goals and objectives, so okay, and some results, and let's measure it with KPIs. But it never works that way, because it's like a pyramid. Because as you follow it through, more people get involved. And many years ago, I managed someone in a country, and I would meet with them, and I would say, okay, it's a hamburger, and it's metaphorically speaking, it's a toasted bun, medium, with American cheese. What is it? Repeat it back. Because I was always told if the customer says it back to you, they understand it, they believe it, right? And then I would turn up later, and it would be a hot dog. So I'd repeat the process. And then I realized that when I say hamburger and they agree hamburger, I see a hamburger, they're seeing a hot dog. So the reason I say that is everyone thinks differently, listens differently, acts differently, reads differently, in contradiction, at different times, typically depending what's going on in their life, right? And here's the other thing, no one reads anymore. You glance at something and you think you know the information, right? So everything that you do from like an idea or a vision, typically it's like a home renovation. It's going to take you at least twice as long and probably cost you at least twice as much, right? But you have to have the tenacity and the determination to see it through. So what I try to do is simplify everything, over-communicate, travel and communicate in person, ask questions, have questions asked back. I don't think there's any secret sauce to that, Jackie. Something that people never mention, and I think it's a really undervalued trait in a leader, is the boring trait of discipline, right? Focus, updating your things to-do list, making sure when I was coming here that I checked in for my flight, I knew where the hotel was, I knew how long it would take to get an Uber. If you have to focus on the basics. Also consistency from a leadership perspective, right? I'm a big believer in to build trust, you've got to show vulnerability. I met someone from a supplier and they'd read some on my LinkedIn post and they were thinking, where do you get the time to do all that? I'm like, what are you talking about? It takes me 2 minutes. right? Because it's natural. And it was a lady, actually, she didn't feel comfortable in her company to be so natural. So people have got to know who they're dealing with, or they won't trust you, and you've got to be consistent. So sometimes you have to have direct conversations, you have to not shy from direct messaging, but that should be independent of where you are in any cycle.
Ooh. Okay, Anne?
You know, it's interesting because I think it's also important, and this is a big part of what we is also contributing towards, is the development of individuals and recognizing where they're going to be successful and how that aligns their desires with your expectations. And, you know, I had mentioned we're redefining roles. We're creating new roles. There's new job descriptions. There's expectations. And someone said, hey, well, we'll just put them all here. And I'm like, well, you know, there's a pivotal piece that we forgot here. We didn't ask the individuals. We didn't understand if this was something that they wanted to be in and that they're going to buy in it. And if we want people to be passionate, to enjoy what they're doing, to be challenged, we better make sure this is what they want to do. And if it's something they want to do and there's a skill set that's missing and they're willing to learn it, to me, it doesn't get any better than that. So, you know, really understanding the messaging of the organization, Colin, everything that you just articulated, but also how the people in your company are going to fit those different roles and what you're going to do as a leader to make sure they're successful.
It's a good point. And going back to that, we had talked about the SQ, you know, the meaning of what you're doing. I agree with you so much. It's just the passion. You know, your organization can't come give you the passion. You know, it's like all of us, are we in alignment with what we should or want to be doing? Is there a skill set, something innate with us that is passionate about that job, bringing that to the table? So
Yeah, and I don't think everybody is equipped to do that. You know, we weren't taught in school, oh, here's how you're going to figure out what your values are. And here's what you're going to figure out what gets you up every morning and gets you excited. So we've actually been trying to spend a lot of time on that at Supply Frame to really kind of back up a little bit and look at all those elements. We talked a lot about it here. You know, what are your values? Actually defining those. That's not as easy as it sounds. You know, it takes a lot of introspection. It takes honesty. It takes sometimes acknowledging that I'm doing something that I probably shouldn't be doing just because I'm trying to climb the ladder or what have you. You know, it takes a little bit of courage, and that's a lot. We also look at thinking about skills and wills, right? What are people good at, but what are they willing to do? You know, I personally thought for sure I was going to be a Broadway dancer. That was my thing as I was growing up. Turns out I'm really good at operations, so I pivoted, and now I realize that's how I kill it, is I'm a VP of operations, right? And so even though you think that there's some path for you, being able to be honest with yourself, look in, and have the tools to help you do that, that's exactly what we're trying to do with our group. And that makes it easier when you find needs for people to come in and take on projects, or you see somebody maybe struggling, but you know, you want to approach them in a way that's going to be positive and positive for change. Those are the things that we're trying to get better at.
Never too late.
I know, that's right. If this whole electronics thing doesn't work out, if we keep going down, it might be jumping ship.
There's always chapter 2. Right?
Exactly.
I'll keep it relatively short, but I'd say, you know, I'd start with what Colin said and others. I think it's keeping things very simple and keeping things very basic, right? And I think one of the things that we do at our company, and again, I think I've learned that I've gotten better at this over time. I think 10 years ago, I probably didn't see things quite the way I do now, but I think reality is we all bring something to the table. We hire, you know, what do? We apply for a job, we get a job, right? And we look, we look at our, they look at our resume, they spend some time with us in an interview, and you're qualified to do the job. But how about those other 5, 10, 20 years of experience that you bring to the table that that you're not exercising every day? Those are muscles you're not using every day, right? So one of the things that we've done during these times, because you have to do more with less, right, is doing a talent assessment of our entire organization to see what people have done before they joined our company, right? And we've found out some amazing things, that people might be in a sales role, but they might have had a 5 or 10 year career in operations, right? Or they may be in engineering role, but they've got a PM role, project management background as well, so we can shift people around. So I think looking at people beyond what they currently do in the role that you have them is very, very important, because most people are not going to raise their hand and say, do you know I can do this? They're not going to do this because they feel uncomfortable, they feel like they're stepping out of their comfort zone, and maybe that's not what you're hiring them to do. But if you give them the opportunity to show you what they can do beyond what they're currently doing, and again, I think the one thing, I think there's a question coming up around youth. I think the one thing that we have to also understand too is, as humans, we're impatient, right? We want things to happen quick, right? So I think the more we can instill our employees that, tell us what you want to do, tell us what your skill sets are, and we'll work with you. And the last thing I will say is, at the end of the day, as employees, as leaders, who do we work for? We don't necessarily work for a company that's on the wall or on your business card. You work for your manager, right? You work for your leader. You work for the people. You work with the people around you. So I think if you can build, Colin, I think said, build that trust with the people that, hey, I trust you. I trust you. That's who I trust. Now, hopefully they trust the company too, but they trust you as an individual, as a human being. I think you'll get the very best out of people.
Oh, man, that's really good, Martin, because a lot of people, you've heard the saying, people leave people, not companies. So a leader at an organization can literally make or break you. If you've got a blocker, you will likely leave that organization. So the leadership is so important. Okay, so let me ask you all, in what areas are you seeing technology improve business functions, streamline tasks, and enhance productivity? So, we have a lot of new technology. So what are you utilizing? What are you seeing as effective? And how are you capitalizing?
So I claim to be an engineer. I do have qualifications. And but I never get the chance to make anything nowadays, right? And I moved to America 10 years ago, didn't even bring my power tools because it's a different voltage, right? Bought a plastic house so I didn't have to paint it. So a couple of years ago, people would join our company and they would tell me, I worked for this company, had a great system. Then again, another system. Like any company, we had a range of different systems, kind of kludgy, bolted together, right? So I started thinking about, let me go back a bit. So I was born in the 70s, and hopefully most of you in the room will remember hand-me-down clothes and toys, right? Should mention that to my kids. I think my granny used to knit my sweater for school, right? I always felt that the salespeople in the company, and I guess I'm a field salesperson at heart, had always had hand-me-down systems. So IT had selected maybe an ERP with a CRM, right? Whoever consulted the sales guy in this process. So I had in my mind that we were going to look at a new CRM. And then I was heading to Japan, and then there was another COVID spike, so my trip was postponed. And at the same point, there's a conference that's next week again called Dreamfest is the concert. So I decided I'm going to go. And it was like myself and my colleague Nick, it was like we were lost, like two kind of component distribution people at a software conference. But we found our way. And what that really did was it really sparked our digital transformation journey. So we invested in multiple clouds and trying to get that unified single source of truth, that much lauded customer 360. So we're well on our path to that. But the reason I mentioned about engineering, I'm not only just executive sponsor, I kind of hate that term, right? But I've got my hands in the machine, which can be the best of the worst, right? Because I'm off next week again, I'm going to see lots of new things, I'm going to want them. Even the QR code on the back of the lanyard, I'm thinking we need that for electronica. Right? So,
in the future, yeah.
So that's something that you'll see me talking about it on LinkedIn. You'll see me commenting on Salesforce posts. We've got a lot of value out of that, but it's really, really difficult because you see a vision of what can be created, but actually trying to deploy it in your own world is a different thing. I completely underestimated change management. I completely underestimated user adoption. Some Rochester people in the room, guilty people. I don't know what, because it's like in the frustrations, I'm doing this for you. Make sense? But last year we were at Dreamfest, which is a concert, and it was the Foo Fighters. Free ticket, by the way, free concession stand.
Yeah.
Just saying. This year it's pink. Anyway, and I said to the guy next to me, I said, well, why are you here? He said, oh, I'm here for Slack. I said, what's Slack? So he said, well, I never do email. I said, what are you talking about? Like, I'm drowning in email. So I went off to investigate Slack, and we brought it in-house. So just before I got up, I checked my phone, not to be rude, but to see how many emails I had today. I had 7.
Wow.
Right?
7.
We live in Slack. Searchable log of all communication and knowledge. So if you could pour everything that you have learned about email. I remember I left school before computers. I know that's hard to believe. Maybe it's a Scottish thing, right? And I remember working at Caltech, it's now Plexus, and we had a blue screen with yellow dots. Then email came out, I think, Outlook.
Yeah.
So to move from that to something that's totally different is mind-bending.
Yes.
But if you can do it, it revolutionizes your world. So to your point, Jackie, Slack AI, so I won't read all the messages I've got. I'll read an AI recap, which I've set to the channels that I'm interested in.
Yep.
My things to do is in Slack lists. The goals are there. I'm living on my phone. So how do you keep track when you're traveling all the time? I'm doing it on my phone.
Right.
So that's a game changer for me and
Good input.
hopefully for everybody at Rochester.
Okay, we're going to be looking into Slack.
Yeah.
We're going to have
It's
too many emails.
it's similar to Teams. If you have Teams, I know is a big one. Like there is that concept of having kind of the platform for, where you communicate versus in
Right.
emails.
Right.
So kind of similar.
But it's a very complicated environment, like in our company, because of acquisitions. I can't even begin to tell you how many different systems we have that drive a whole different set of challenges. That's just a reality. But there's things, and I challenged the team. I said, look, we're making investments. We're doing this. What can we do today? What can we do in the next 90 days to make your life easier? And people came up with RPAs and bots. And then the group who was going to be impacted by the bot said, wait a minute, is our jobs going away? I said, absolutely not. We've got to get our heads wrapped around the fact that there's technology, there's AI that can do these tedious, we call it mapping of customers and transactional types of things that imagine you will now have the opportunity to do something that's even more valuable to the company to drive the business, to drive the growth. So the change management piece that you mentioned is huge. And people should not underestimate having change management teams in your organization. And it's funny because as a leader, when I said, people adopting it, well, if I tell them they're going to adopt it, I want to see a smile and some enthusiasm. And then they said, no, you have to understand, it's part of the process. You have to be a little bit more benevolent and make sure everybody sees what the value is of this. So, technology is exciting and it's going to drive us, and we're going to have to keep learning new things and embrace it. But it doesn't take away, and I think TTI had the human element, because that piece will always be in our industry, and it's part of business, and it's always going to be around. So the fact that technology is helping us to drive business differently or, manage processes more efficiently, that's good, because that frees us up to do other things that we need to do to meet the metrics.
Very good input. Very
That
good
is
input.
one thing, just a discipline thing that I always talk to my team, right? Because there's no shortage of tech out there. If you haven't done it lately, do a run through of everything your company has. There's going to be stuff on there that you don't even remember that you guys have. It's kind of a fascinating exercise. I always tell my team, you can't bring me something new unless we're taking something away off that list. But think about technology that helps you evolve. That's kind of our litmus test. So you're not just bringing something in to make it easier what you do today. Is it going to change the way you do business or the way you do a task or the way that you actually bring value? Those can be kind of good things to think about when you're evaluating a technology and the impact it might have on the organization.
Yeah, and same thing. There's not too much to add here. I would just say that use technology to make your life easier, not to make it harder, right? And we use the word AI a lot, and it means different things to different people. But all these applications that you just talked about, whether it's Salesforce or Slack, they're all AI driven now in some ways behind the scenes, and embrace it. And again, every one of our employees have access to ChatGPT or any of the services that we pay for, and we embrace them to use them every single day as an efficiency tool, right? Not as a replacement, And I personally believe AI will never replace one individual at my company. If anything, it won't add jobs. It won't take away jobs.
Right, and it enhances AI and all these tools enhance the need for critical thinking. Right? We can't rely on the tools. We have to use them as a streamlining, but use our critical thinking for what we can take from it. And really the change management part, bring in Carla, right?
Yeah, right.
Bring in Carla to do the change management. Okay, so we're gonna pivot real quick. And here we are, we have a lot of fresh faces here, but we do definitely have a mature industry, and we're looking at in every position, even if whatever role you're in, everybody should be thinking of succession, whether they're going to go to a different role, somebody else is going to take their role, whatever it is. So let's talk about that real quick. So developing the next generation of our leaders, what common mistakes do you see that hinder talent in their career advancement or prevent promotions, and what practices are launching people forward? So we're wanting to know from your perspectives, where have you seen people go wrong? And where have you seen them go right in general? No naming names, but just in general, for people who develop leaders in this panel. So Colin, we'll start with you.
So I always believe you can put good people to good work, right? And with versatility. And whenever there's a challenge, I'm guilty of gravitating towards a relatively small, select group of people that I completely trust and know that they will go into it. As a leader, there's people talk about, I don't want to be micromanaged, I don't want to be managed by fear, all of that, right? But the other side of that is that leaders don't want to be doing that either, right? There's an onus on the individual to make a contribution and do the job, right? So where was I going with this? So the succession plan is a funny thing because, we could all be sitting here working for Nokia mobile phones 20 years ago talking about succession planning in a company that barely exists today, right? So the world's changing. By the time you get there, it might have changed. I remember back last year, the question was, if you're presented with an opportunity, what do you do? I think it was Kylie stood up and said, I'm not sure, I'll think about it. And I got the mic and I said, I'm going to jump at it. And the point there was, it's confidence. So if you're sitting here thinking that succession planning is painting by numbers, it's absolutely not. It ties back to resilience and adding value in any condition. The opportunities are going to come along, but they're not always going to be presented to you, right? So there's times where I might ask someone to help me with something, and they not only do they do that, but they do it with panache and add a little bit more to it. And then you get thinking about that. So, first of all, you have to have the confidence to seize the opportunity. Secondly, sometimes you have to have the confidence to create the opportunity as well. It's not going to come to you, and if it does, it's going to be quite rare. And typically, when there's a problem to solve, so you're going to have to take an opportunity that's really a strong challenge. So I thought that kind of answers your question.
Yes, that was good.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent response, and I think there's a lot of different approaches. I know that the reality in many organizations today is we have got to find that next level of talent. We've got to recruit them, but we've got to give them some experiences, because I have to laugh when people have come to me and said, you know what, Ann, I want to be a director. I said, okay, a director of what? I don't know. I want to be a director and I want to be in charge of everybody. And so they don't even know what they're asking for. So in reality, is putting back down in a kind way, okay, let's walk through this because it's going to be a different level of a commitment. It's going to be a different this. And I'm going to give you this opportunity to be on this project and work with this group of people and just give you an idea of what being a manager is like. When you come back and tell me how much fun it was and how successful it was, you can tell me, is this something that still aligns within your expectations? Because the reality of what happens in life and how you have to tackle the different challenges that come up to you can be different from people's perceptions. And you don't want to be having, in your view, a plan or an individual's plan, and then to find out when they're actually testing the waters, this isn't going to work for a lot of different reasons.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that question when somebody comes and says, I want to be a manager, I want to be a director. Of what? They don't really know. And you ask why, and they don't always know either. They just know that's the next rung in the ladder they're supposed to get to. So asking those questions is very helpful. Ask it of yourself. I ask it of myself all the time. One thing that we're trying to, again, to get better at is your career think of it as your own business, right? It's your career. It's nobody else's. Your career path, you need to have a strategy. You need to know the goals that you're going after, et cetera. That takes work, right? You got to do some thinking. You've got to have some soul searching. Us as leaders are not here to figure out your career. Our job is to help you with that. We're here to support you and ask those questions and give you feedback, the famous feedback that we talked about earlier. But at the end of the day, it is your career. And so the more that you can kind of think about it as, I'm running my own business, I need to have a plan, a strategy, I need to check in at certain points and check on my goals, those types of things, that's going to be so much helpful in the long run, right, for that next generation as you think about, you're making your career path and thinking about the steps that you want to take to get to a particular goal. The more that you can kind of think about it in these bite-sized pieces and have your support team that helps you with that is going to be ideal.
Yeah, I have the opportunity to be on the board at Boston University in Boston, and we meet with about 100 business students every year. Every school does this. I'm just part of the business school. And we ask these students, and these are seniors, right? These are seniors in their fall semester. So they're, 4 to 6 months away from applying for a job or working in a career. And these are very motivated, very smart young people, very, they have their act together, right? They went there for a reason. They became a business major. They're specialized in some area. But it is unbelievable to me. We ask them, what do you want to do in your career? And out of the 100, 90 have no idea. They have no idea. They have no idea. And I said, what do you want in your first job? And they say experience, which is a good answer. And in what industry? We don't know. We're exploring. So you can look at that and say, well, that's surprising, not surprising. Having 2 children of my own, they had the same experience, don't know what I want to do after college. But it's also an opportunity for us. And one of the things that I think, if Jackie asked me on this panel what I get from what we brings to the table, I'm going to say it brings the ability to bring young people and different people with different levels of experience together to help mentor and guide this next generation of people, right? Of the workforce. Because, again, I am a mechanical engineer running a software company. Don't connect. Those dots don't connect. You can look at it in any way you want. They don't connect, right? And so I, use my mechanical side at home building stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter, right? I think you have to give the opportunity to get people exposed to things. And I have so many examples of students that I've hired that have found themselves in this industry because they talked to somebody and they just happened to say, hey, let's give it a try, right? So I think it's an opportunity for us. I think that question of, I don't know what I want to do, I think it's an opportunity for us to bring people into this industry because believe it or not, this industry is not well known outside of,
Right.
it's not
Very
well known,
true.
right? They see the names of the companies that are on the actual hardware, but they don't know what's inside them, right? And so for us, for us at EE Tech, I mean, we're going to continue to try to cultivate that next generation. And the last thing I'd say is I think there's a high degree of, for every one person I meet with strong confidence, I meet 5 that lack confidence. They just lack confidence, and for all kinds of reasons. So if they can connect with somebody in a business, a mentor, an executive sponsor, whatever you want to call it, just a friend, you'll be surprised how quick they gain confidence.
Yeah.
And when they gain that confidence, you can see them turn. You can see them go from, this is what I want to do, and then that passion and all that other soft stuff that we talk about, those power skills kick in. But if you're unsure of what you want to do and unsure in your surroundings, you're probably not going to be able to give it your best, right? So,
It's really good feedback. The confidence, again, it keeps coming up over and over and over. So really critical. Also the mentorship you mentioned, and it's companies being very dedicated to that effort, whether you have them internally, there's some way that you're providing that. Obviously we have our We Mentorship program too, but focusing on that as a real business strategy, I think is really critical. So if we're staying on this topic of, what skills are we looking for though? So even compared to 2 years ago or 3 years ago, everything has changed. So much has evolved in our industry. If you're hiring right now, what specific, if you're doing an interview, what are you looking for? 1, 2, or 3 things. Like what skills are you looking for?
I'm not looking at the skills. There's hopefully when I'm meeting someone to interview, they've been through some level of, sieving to get to this point. What I want to know is I want to know who they are, right? Because we spend a lot of time interviewing people, but who are they? And by that, I mean, like, what drives you? And it's amazing. I mean, I've got 2 or 3 things I always do at interviews, and one, for example, as a softener, I say, you're here today for an interview for any job in the world. It's your dream job. What is it? And I've had people say, I want to sell electronic components. Get out, right?
No.
So my answer, by the way, is I want to play soccer for Glasgow Rangers, right? The window's closing, but I'm just saying. Because I want to know what fuels your passion. I want someone to tell me they wanted to be Eddie Van Halen, right? Or Tom Brady, right? But I was in, I won't mention the country because it leads to the individual. I was in a country in Latin America. And to give an example, what drives you? What do you all want in the audience today, listening to us talk? You want to be happy, right? But what drives you? What's the 1 or 2 things that really drive you? We talked about that on a podcast I did a year or so ago. So I'm talking to this gentleman, and I must admit that it was during the World Cup. His team was playing. We'd been to the bar. He'd had 2 or 3 drinks. I drank less than him because I knew what was coming next, right? So I was like, who are you? What do you mean? Well, who are you? Because we hire you for this remote position. We then fly back to Boston. You're on your own. Can we trust you? Who are you? What drives you? And I made him cry. Not deliberately. And what really drove him was the fear of failure. And he'd worked in the industry. He had a passion outside the industry. He set up his own business. And it completely failed. And in his culture, that failure was not seen as, like something that you could move on from and renew. It was really deep-rooted embarrassment to him and his family, right? This is when he started to cry. I felt terrible. Not that terrible, because now I'm getting to the heart of the matter, right? But the point there is I knew he wouldn't want to repeat it. So I knew he would do whatever he could to be successful. So that's what I want to know in an interview. I want to know who you are.
Really good. Back to the values.
Yeah, I think depending upon the different roles that you're looking at and the individuals, there's key elements. And when I'm talking to someone, I'm very curious on, so what prompted you to come to this position, and how do you see yourself being like passionately successful, satisfied? Does it meet the things that the expectations? And how willing are you to flex? So, the position as it is today could be this. Our company is changing, it's evolving. Are you willing to learn different things? Are you willing to take a look at something a little different down the road? And the candidates who answer with, wait a minute, we haven't even gotten to my vacation yet, but I want to explain to you that I want to do this one thing, and I'm going home at 4:59. And so, in the conversations, you get a feel for the people who are genuinely dedicated to looking for something that they're going to see satisfying. I've been in this industry for several decades. I still learn things every day. And for people not to have that willingness to want to continue to learn and to want to continue to change and to understand that if they don't have that in their personality, we're not going to be able to be successful together.
That's really good. And I loved your podcast because you talked about that positivity coming through.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always tell people, I was the sales leader, and I remember different people going, "Why are you so happy all the time?" I'm like, well, first of all, as a sales leader, if you're a real downer to talk to, that's not so good for everyone, But secondly, I said I do it for my health also. And I love what I'm doing. I jump out of bed, I think about, hey, this is what's going on with my day. And this is why I do my job. And as I take the tone in conversations, and there's a lot of tough conversations, a lot of different challenging situations, but I want to come across in a positive attitude. I had a call 4 o'clock this morning with a group of people. And one of the colleagues said, oh boy, this is going to be a bad call. I'm like, no, it's not. I think it's going to be the best call of the day. And this is why, because we're going to treat it this way. We're going to manage it this way. I'm going to set a tone. And I want everybody to understand we're going to take this approach, and no matter how difficult it is, we're going to get here and everyone's going to have a smile on their face because we're setting a tone. We're the leaders. We have to set a tone. And as you're bringing people into different positions, they need to get that too. That's important.
Oh, I love that. I actually think that's so critical. I don't know that too many people would say that their manager is so positive. Right? It's something so needed.
It's infectious. I mean, even more so than COVID. It's one of the things that spreads further and farther because people want to be in a positive environment, right? There's enough that is kind of bringing us down when challenges of the day. Be the light. Be the light in the darkness. Be the one that says, yeah, guys, we can do it. I cannot tell you as a leader how often I'm so thankful for people that have that attitude, right? When they come into a challenge or some kind of situation. Getting back to the question on what we look for, we always kind of rally around this theme of attitude and aptitude, right? That's what we're looking for. People that come in and kind of show who they are, show that attitude, show that positivity. If you can demonstrate that, that's going to go a very long way. Your aptitude, your willingness to learn, your willingness to change, all those things. I mean, if you can nail all the things that we've been talking about here and be the world's greatest critical thinker and change management person and have the stellar social media, great. But there's a lot that's just going to be innate in who you are. And if you can really kind of demonstrate what that is, that's going to go a long way because we can teach you the rest.
Yeah, and I'll boil it down to 3 things. One is I look for energy because energy is contagious, right? It's contagious. So as a leader, you try to be as energy, and 4 o'clock in the morning, you were energized, right? But you're only one person, right? You're only one person, so you need other people to carry that energy across the organization. So we look for energy, and again, it's easy to see. It's really easy to see if somebody has energy and passion and all those other things. And the other one we looked for is agility. It's somebody that is willing to adapt and change. I was doing an interview at my last company in Boston, and we very qualified individual, had all those traits except the agility piece. And I explained to him, we were talking about the role, and he takes his portfolio. I don't see that on the job description. I don't see that on the job description. So, okay. So that kind of backed things up a little bit, right? So there's lots, I don't think, any of us are probably doing our job description in this room, are we?
Right.
We're doing something different or more, right? So again, agility and energy is what we look for.
Yeah.
Really good input. Okay, so I have another question then to segue into corporate culture. And this is where all of these things come into play. And it's interesting because when we look at culture, one little drop of poison will poison a whole entire, pool. That's all you need is one. So what is it that you do actively, though? You're looking for these traits, you're looking for these types of people into your organization. So what do you do to protect the organization, right? Also the corporate culture, to develop the working environment you want?
Rochester was founded in 1981 by our CEO and founder, Kurt Garish, and there's a mission statement on the wall and a lot of the buildings. And over the years, we've taken it down and thought we'd redo it, and we've ended up back where we started because there's some really basic values that underpin who we are. But in terms of my view of culture, so I don't like the term a family culture because it's a company. A family culture, you don't get hired or fired, right? I prefer to call it a community, okay? I'm a big believer in light touch. I'm a big believer in empowerment, leaving people to do the role, minimal supervision, again, all these types of things. Don't measure something twice, you can measure once, for example. Automate everything. It's like a GPS. It drives me mad. Who designed this thing with these extra clicks to get to where I want to go, right? I like it simple. Nobody reads anymore. That includes me. I don't want to read any instructions. I can't build flat pack furniture, and I've never used an iron. Terrible, right? I've got some tips on how to avoid it though, right? So, but here's the other part of it, right? So, for a community-based culture to work, everybody's got to do their part, right? So, during the more challenging situation with the industry, I put into Slack the phrase, "Do your job." Now, Bill Belichick might polarize some folks, but us that live in New England are probably happy with those Super Bowl rings.
Be careful with that comment.
Yeah.
Just saying, I'm just saying.
Remember where we are.
I've got the mic.
That's right.
I've got the mic. Right. So, I got a kind of muted response. So people have a problem with you saying, "Do your job," right? Baffling. People don't typically like to be measured, even if you're a salesperson. Again, I'm a name, not a number, right? Oh yeah, we get that, right? And in Rochester, we value you for who you are, not just what you do, but you kind of have to do both. So I went round all of the offices, or most of them in the world, and I referenced this again. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Okay, put your hand up if you applied for your job or a job at some point in your career. I think it should be everybody, right? Unless you snuck in the door. Hands up if there was a job description. Right? Did that job description ever say, "Do a half-assed job when you can be bothered"? Right? Okay. So you got the job. There was probably some offer of employment or agreement or contract depending on where you live and work. So hand up if you got one of those. Right? So the company says, "Here's the job." And you agree, "Yes, that's great, I'll do that." And then the company says, "Okay, we'll pay you this." Fair? It's a trade, right? The company always pays. Right? We don't say that we will maybe pay you some of the time if you do a half-assed job, if we can be bothered, right? Or oopsie, we forgot, sorry about that. We always pay. The company always delivers, right? So when I see these phrases, I don't want to be micromanaged, typically they come from a person that are unable to manage themselves, right? I don't want to be managed by fear. But remember what I said about my colleague? If you're in a sales-based role, you're always going to have that level of anxiety in you, and it's something you have to get used to, especially in our fast-paced, cyclical industry. So I think what I'm really asking is for a fair shake here as the employer. So in our community-based culture, it does require everybody to do their job. Now, does that mean if you're in a sales role, you're going to be successful all of the time? Of course not, right? First inside salesperson I ever hired, still in the company, 17 years later. First field salesperson, first manager, same, right? People you can work with, people you can trust, people you go to within the organization. So I guess that's the point. In a community-based culture, which is what I firmly believe in, everybody has to stand up and be counted. Also, if someone falls down, you help them back up, right? But in this industry at the minute, I think something I said to Jackie is no one's coming to save us. I don't want them to anyway, right? You've got to embrace the challenge. You've got to run into it, right? There might be some people in the room that are thinking, yes, I'm that type of person. There's probably a few in the room that are kind of going to hide under the table as well. So much as we come to these conferences and or summits, and we want promotion and we want that, you've got to be that person that's going to fight for it and run into the wind as well.
Resiliency.
Yeah, and I think the other comment I want to make, or just additional highlight, is, we have 24,000 people in our company. Statistically, there's going to be some situations, and you're going to have people who aren't performing or who are detracting from the group being able to be successful. And as a leader, you have a responsibility to take action. You cannot allow that. You cannot allow that to continue. You cannot allow that to impact the success, the objectives, the group and everyone else. You have to take action. And people have to see that you're willing to do that for the team, because it's a company. And I like what you said, it's not a family, it's business. And so, in my career, I have taken action when action needs to be taken. It's the right thing to do. It's tough, but it's the right thing to do.
So, I would say that it's interesting because I would say that is really the deficit going on. Really, maybe not even in just our industry, but across a lot of industries, is allowing bad behaviors to continue. And because we have relationships, so this person has been here, or they're seen as valuable somehow to the organization, that they're just allowed to be there because they're just been there for so long or whatever. So I appreciate you saying that, because everybody is responsible to contribute not only in their job, but to the culture, right? You're either adding to or detracting from the culture, right?
And we all succeed and fail together, right? We are one company at the end of the day. And so we're either all rising or we're all falling together. We have very little at our company. We have very little tolerance for the blame game. Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter what went wrong. Doesn't matter who did it. What we do is we figure out, how do we not do it again? And we all learn from it, right? And having that discipline, calling it out when people are trying to do the blame game. I love that. What was it? I think Lennon said, you can have excuses or results, but you can't have both. I am writing that down because there's no tolerance for it, right? At the end of the day, you're absolutely right. We have a job to do. At the end of the day, you have to take action, absolutely, right? And that's how you're going to win. Are you going to do it perfectly? No. Are you going to hit every single number every time? Let's hope so, but maybe not. But as long as everybody is there, pushing each other, challenging each other, supporting each other, that to me is a successful company.
Yeah, and I think I'd just add, you owe it to them too, in some way, right? You owe it to them, because if you're not performing in your career, you probably know that to some degree, right? You're probably uncomfortable, or for whatever the reason, you owe it to it. You owe it to that employee to tell that employee that it's just not working out, right? And it's and move them on in a way that's humane, right? That's there are good ways to move people on, right? Yeah. And you owe it to them. And if you don't do that, what happens? It just brings everyone else down around them, and before you know it, they've seen that they find themselves 3, 4, 5 years into a job, and they've lost their skills too, right? So, as much as it is for the company, You have to do it for the company, number one. But an area that I think that might make you feel a little bit better when you have to do these kinds of things, hopefully you're doing it for the person too. You're gonna force that person to be in a better position someplace down the road.
Yeah.
Right, that's a really good point. So you mentioned doing that in a humane
Humane
way,
way.
which I really like. So I'm just going to throw this out there since we were talking about yesterday. We played the video on incivility. So you weren't here, the men weren't here, but we played a video on the impact of teams when you have incivility. We see this all the time in cultures. So are there strategies to help people learn in that way, or do you find a lack of civility from a person? Is that just, it's time to move on? How do you deal with these situations when there's incivility in the workplace?
Is it like people being rude to each other or just a bit
Yeah,
disrespectful?
just not kind and nice.
It depends if it's an isolated incident and the level of it or a pattern of behavior, in my mind. I think, was it Leanna this morning? Great speaker, by the way, really great speaker. There was a slide that she put up, I took a sneaky little snapshot of, and it was kind of like, I don't know, the top and the bottom of something. And like everything, I'm a kind of visual person, so I was thinking of people within my team and how they are great at that, but I then have to manage this situation here. So I'm very blessed to have pretty much the same group of people to lead for maybe a decade or more. Very little turnover, right? We're all getting together in a couple of weeks' time. It would be completely disingenuous to say that at any given time there's not some level of butting heads. Right? Because you cannot have a group of highly motivated, passionate people. And sometimes, because I'm a believer in developing trust through people, getting to know who people are, a little consequence of that is people can be a little overly familiar, right? They can say a bit too much. They can go a little too far. So it depends. I did have an instance where someone was bringing a lot of value at one point in this journey, and I probably turned a blind eye to some of their behaviors. And the more I thought about it, and the trouble was I would see the tip of the iceberg, but then I started to, because I saw what I saw, how they would relate to me and members of my team. What I didn't see is how they would relate to everybody else. But it's like the usual suspects at the end where all the clues start to come together. I'm traveling and I'm seeing it from a different perspective in a different time zone. And I'm watching all of these little things and the tapestry starts to build. Now, moving this person on was going to be quite a big thing in our company. And there's a great book called FYI that I got when I was at Arrow, and there's about managing poor performers. And it's like most poor performers don't know it. They had really good performance reviews. You might have to defend yourself inside and outside the organization. I knew this was what was all coming, right? Because inside the organization, there was going to be a level of shock. Outside the organization, of course, we're going to end up with some mutual NDA, non-disparagement, blah, blah, blah agreement, which means the person can go and say what they want, but we can say nothing at all, right? Until they stretch the chewing gum, and then we have to maybe send a letter. That's what typically happens in these situations. So I'm thinking about all of this, and then I spoke to someone, a single contributor. I just came out of my mouth one day and I said, why is this person behaving like this? And the person said, because they can get away with it. Oh, gut punch. But well said, right? And my immediate reaction was, not any longer. So to answer the question, the answer is my mistake. I turned a blind eye to the behavior because the person was bringing value. I should have dealt with it sooner. So forget instances where someone's having a bad day or they lose their temper or something as a situation. Hopefully it's not too egregious. Hopefully we can kind of paper over that crack and restore harmony. But you know what? You know if someone's not the right person for your culture. You might even know it during the interview, right? And you made that mistake for other reasons. So my answer is, you've got to address it. The sooner the better. unequivocally, and you're probably going to have to defend yourself for doing it.
Ooh. So how many leaders are willing to defend them? Like, that's a really tough situation to be in, but I think it's one of the toughest leadership positions to be in, but it's probably very necessary, part of the job. Okay, so Carla had pulled me up and asked me some questions, and so maybe this is an opportunity to continue and just to talk about, here we are, women in electronics, in this electronics industry and related markets. So what do we think about this? What value proposition do you see for we in the industry, and what role should we play moving forward to help organizations advance in their business goals in the industry?
You know, this is my first WE Summit, so it's funny because I talked to a couple people and they're like, oh, we thought we saw you last year. I'm like, no. And I have been in this industry for several decades, so I have a lot of experience in the industry. I have never been at an event like this. And there's a lot of elements that make this unbelievable. And I'm sitting in thinking, how am I going to get this message to the executives in our company and other people so they have the same knowledge and excitement that I have, and what the different presentations. It's funny because, again, I'm in sales, so I'm pretty much not shy going up to people and talking. But it's as if, as I'm reaching out and talking to everyone, it's like we've known each other for years, you know? I mean, it's unbelievable. And I've never been at an event. Most of the industry events I've been at, we're looking at data, we're looking at trends, information specifically related to the business. We're not talking about the kinds of things that we're talking about here. And I appreciate, because like everyone else, we got a lot going on. And to hear many people say they took the time out of their ridiculous schedules to come to the event because it means something and they're getting something out of it. I believe we have to continue to drive it forward. We have to continue to support it. I want everyone in my organization, we said there's 24,000 people, I want everyone in my organization to understand what's going on here, and then to continue to see I love the fact that a lot of people said it's different topics, it's different speakers, it's coming, every year there's new things to think about and new things, but to have this venue and this whole experience, I'm telling you, Vishay has a global presence. We're working with you, and we're going to continue to partner with you, not just in the Americas, but in the other regions. And the mentorship program was something in which, went back and talked to our CEO, and he's like, what the heck, And we had several people from Vishay be part of the WE mentoring program, and we've done internal calls to kind of have different awarenesses that in our company, and I'm being very public about it, we didn't have the sensitivities to all these different things and all these different topics. So it's been wonderful.
Thank you, Ann. And shout out to Monica and team again for the mentorship program. It has been a flagship program that this team has worked so hard on. So if you're not a mentor or mentee, come into the program. There's a lot of work to be done to help a lot of people. So appreciate that input, Ann. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you and I are actually kind of working on one of them. One of the things that we've done is created our own chapter at Supply Frame. We have what we call SFWE, Supply Frame Women in Electronics,
I didn't
right?
know you were calling it.
We were, yeah. So, how do we recreate some of this magic internally in a way that continues with this type of development, in a way that speaks to exactly the challenges our group is facing? And it's been phenomenal. People are hungry for this. People want this sense of community, this ability to be vulnerable, this safe space where they can bring up things, challenges, questions, and support each other. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes every time we have one of these meetings, because it's infectious, just like COVID and positivity and all the other things, right? It's very, very, it's a positive influence on just the demeanor of our people, and really gives them something in this resiliency topic of, here's somewhere that you can kind of come and actually think about these things that we talk about here at a greater space. So on the one hand, you have the larger organization. Think about if you don't have something in your company, can you start something? Can you create a group even within your team that creates some of this same magic that this community has? The other thing that comes to mind is, as a WE member, I challenge each of you, you have a responsibility to be an ambassador. Go out and talk to people that maybe aren't involved. Bring some of these ideas that you learned here. Think about, I'm sure we're going to say at the end, what are the takeaways you have from here, and what can you do to bring some of that messaging to those that aren't here in person? That's how this thing continues to grow, and that's how it organically becomes the magic that it's supposed to be. So those are the two things that pop in my mind.
Thank you. It's still a grassroots effort. But explain what you guys are doing a chapter meeting with DigiKey, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So Supply Frame, we're in Pasadena, California, not too far from here, and we actually have a design lab that we built many years ago. It started out as we got into kind of the maker space. We actually bought a website called Hackaday. Those of you that maybe have been around in the industry know, or if you're interested in kind of the tinker maker, that side of the business, it is really where it started. But it really kind of took a life of its own, where we bought a bunch of the equipment to be able to be both an incubator. We've connected with some of the universities in the area. We have residencies that have happened there where individuals, people with ideas can come in and use the equipment, share ideas on design work, those types of things. It's really been this really kind of magical space. And what we're doing is we're actually, for the Los Angeles WE chapter, we're hosting an event at the Design Lab with DigiKey, where you can come in and actually learn about what the heck all these machines are. How do you actually bring a design to life? And we're even going to be we're going to learn how to solder, and we're actually all going to create our own little blinky WE DigiKey pins that are going to be, that we can all be proud that we actually built on our own. But if you think about it, it's the community, it's the education, it's understanding what all these things are that you guys talk about and sell every day, but who knows what a resistor is? Let's find out, those kind of things. And we're really looking forward to it. We really appreciate DigiKey being a partner with us. I'm looking forward to getting the LA chapter in particular kind of resurrected, and this will be one of our first big events that we're doing.
All right. So
in October. Yep. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think we're just starting, right, Jackie? I think we picked up momentum in the last 12 or 18 months, and I don't see it slowing down. I see it picking up, right? I first met Jackie when I was with Arrow before this job, and we again we embraced it at our company. It's growing. I know we have 3 or 4 people here today, but there's a whole list of people that would have liked to have come. And next year we hope to bring a lot more, and we're also going to be looking at creating a chapter as well. But kind of what's in it for us, and why it's a I know we use this word quite a bit this afternoon, is community, right? It does feel like a community. It doesn't feel like a big industry association, right? Some of us will be going to these other industry association meetings in October and so forth in Chicago, and those are great too. Those are great, but this is more of an intimate society where I feel, and I think our employees feel the same thing, more collaboration, willing to help each other. And again, Monica, if the mentorship program was your idea, congratulations, because that's been an amazing program.
Absolutely.
And I would love to see that grow and encourage. I know we're part of that as well. And just the content itself, the educational content, right? Beyond that, right? And so for us, I think we're walking. I think we've definitely walked, and now we're probably speed walking, but we're hoping to be running faster with WE in the months and years ahead. And again, it's well received. I mean, we had one young man that's in Denver, and he joined your chapter for a walk one Saturday.
Yeah,
Ben, and he said, this is the best thing we've ever done. He said, I met people, I got to talk about the industry, and again, a lot of young people, don't know other people in the industry, right? So it's a great way for them to connect, but just keep doing what you're doing and just do it more of it, So.
Thank you. Well, this has been a great panel, and I encourage, all of our attendees today as well, reach out to our leaders if you have any questions, but also just the message is get involved, spread the word, and we have that new corporate member package as well, so just about any organization can get involved and be a part of all of us coming together for this community. It's everybody here, it's your organization, mission, right? We always say that. It's not about us, the founders. Eventually we won't be here, right? It's about you. It's about the community. It's about the industry and driving it forward and helping to make it even better than where we're all left it.